So who are the biggest winners and the biggest losers when it comes to the armor change on the PTR right now? It's a complex issue, guys, but what I'm going to do in this video is completely explain what the armor damage reduction, can we call it a nerf? Let's call it a change. The armor damage reduction change on the PTR actually means for us playing Overwatch. Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to the channel. I am Stylosa. Okay, so this is the change. Damage reduction from armor reduced from -5 to -3. Developer comments, before this change, armor reduced all incoming damage up to 5, maxing at half of the normal amount. This change reduces the damage reduction to 3 while still capping it at half. This change will be mostly noticeable on heroes that fire quickly or in a burst of shots, such as shotguns, and which do more than 6 damage per shot. For example, Soldier 76's heavy pulse rifle will now do 16 damage per shot to armor, up from 14, an increase of 15%. Armor was a bit too strong overall, especially when being healed quickly and often. This change will help most or more heroes fight against higher armored enemies. Okay, that's really complicated, isn't it? That's like, well, what does that mean? Like, well, for the layman, it just means that armor now reduces -3 instead of -5. But it's not that simple, right? Because it has a lot of different effects on different heroes. So initially, we thought, oh, wow, Tracer's going to do actually loads of damage. But she doesn't. Tracer's damage is completely unchanged when firing into the body, i.e. that is not the crit box, so not a headshot of an enemy. If she headshots somebody, this is where it gets really funky, guys, she will do more damage. You're looking at about a 28-ish% increase in damage when Tracer does a headshot. Actually, scratch that, it's 29% damage, right? But that's when it's in damage 0 fall off. That means it's in Tracer's optimal range. And this is where it's going to get really complicated here, guys. So what I'm going to do is show you a graph. Now, this graph is absolutely brilliant. It gives you some idea of the approximate, well, it's not approximate. These are the, maybe you could say they're approximate because they are leading from damage sources that have been reported on Wikipedia. But they're going to be fairly close to what the actual real world increase will be. Of course, we'll need to get into an actual, get into proper games, maybe watch some of the pros play, get feedback from professional scrims when this is used, play the Overwatch on the ladder when this all goes live. But we can look at these percentages and work out where the damage increase comes from. So this graph is brilliant, and this is by the Reddit user Clumsy Lee, and you can see that what it does is it shows you the damage increase in percent for each hero, and then there's a red box around the heroes that have a damage increase when it's a headshot. Now, remember, it's important to note that Tracer's damage is not increased when she is body shotting. She is still doing the same amount of damage. It's to do with the speed Tracer fires, the damage each pellet does, and all of that stuff. However, if she headshots, she now does straight up 29% more damage. That is massive. That means if you do have the aim, you are going to burn down tanks much faster. That means tanks like Erisa, tanks like Reinhardt, Roadhog, anybody. No, sorry, not Roadhog, because Roadhog doesn't have armor. That's what you've got to remember, guys. It's heroes that have got armor. D.Va will take a ton of damage really quickly and she'll get her armor stripped off by a Tracer headshotting her. So it still is a damage increase to Tracer, but it's not a flat damage increase. Okay, so let's go through this, right? So when we look at these heroes, we've got D.Va, Roadhog, and Reaper. They're going to get around about a 14% damage increase. Now, missiles for D.Va will go up 14%, I do believe. That is a result of missiles being what they are, right? Being a projectile and doing a certain set amount of damage per hit, whereas a primary fusion cannon fire won't actually be affected, okay? Because it has a max damage of 2 per pellet, with 4 max on headshots, so it won't change, okay? The micro missiles, though, is 14% increase on direct hits only, yeah? So splash damage will be unchanged. So you can see this is actually kind of really complicated. And of course, a pistol will go up in damage by 22%. Again, this is just against armor, guys. None of this is against just straight up HP. You're not just going to straight up do 22% more damage. It will only be to targets that have got armor. That is the main thing to remember here. All right, so as we go through the list, we'll notice some heroes that actually do stand out. So one of them is Sombra. Now, Sombra stands out really like a hell of a lot. So what we're looking at for Sombra is a 25% damage increase on body shots with her weapon to armor. That means she does 25% more damage to armored targets when she's body shotting them. So not hitting them in a critical area. If she headshots, you're looking at about 18% damage increase. So that's still huge. That is a pretty big buff there to Sombra. That means Sombra is going to be doing a lot more damage to your Erisas, to your Reinhardts, to your Divas. That's huge, right? So when it comes to harassing tanks, that's massive. And again, before we carry on here, guys, the issue is, why is this being changed? What does this do? Well, this is a very DPS favored change and maybe not so great for tanks because it will probably result in DPS being able to burn through tanks. I've had a lot of people already reaching out to me going, well, Sty, I'm a Reinhardt player. We've just been stunned to death. Now we're going to just get deleted by every DPS in the game. Is that really going to happen, Sty? Again, we don't really know until we get this onto the live servers. But the facts are, there will be a straight up damage increase to you if you've got armor by most heroes in the game, which is going to be interesting. And it probably does mean that tank heavy comps are going to go out of the window because you are going to need a DPS to strip through the tanks, and it probably will allow these DPS now to burn through the healing. They burn through a tank as it's being healing more effectively, okay? But remember, there's a lot of things in Overwatch. There's things like bubbles, there's barriers, there's damage boosts, there's Discord, there's loads of stuff, right? Okay, let's go back to the graph. So, and by the way, I know I've shared this graph out, but this graph is really, really good. So thanks for visualizing this once again. Clumsy Lee. All right, so let's take a look at Torbjorn. Now, Torb is funky, right? Because Torb's secondary fire is a shotgun. So you're going to be looking at about a 27% increase on body shots, remember, with a 10% increase on headshots. Now, remember, this is all within your maximum damage range. So this will not happen at max range. It's within your ideal optimal range for each hero. But the big thing with Torb is his turret will do 22% more damage to armor. Guess who else does 22% damage to armor? Ladies and gentlemen, that's right. Well, 22% more damage to armor. It's Bob. So Bob and the turret for Torb become much stronger against armor. So Bob, okay, is a bit of an interesting one. If Bob tends to annihilate teams when nobody does anything about Bob, but if you've got an Anna, she'll put Bob to sleep, or your Reinhardt just blocks the Bob or whatever. And there's a lot of ways of dealing with Bob. However, he will be more effective now against tanks with armor. It doesn't just mean tanks, right? Because remember, Brig can give you armor with repair pack or with her ultimate, which now only lasts for 30 seconds, by the way. Then the armor is totally stripped off. So even though those like little minor buffs of armor, you'll do more damage to that. Because remember, it's not damage to tanks, it's just damage to armor. But tanks generally have armor. Okay, Erisa is a really funky one. Erisa does more damage now, and this is actually a really, really, really big increase. I think Orisa, out of all the heroes, gets the biggest flat DPS upgrade. So she will now do 33% more damage to body shots and 12% more damage on headshots. That is ridiculous. That is a major buff to Orisa. So Orisa will just do more damage to tanks. That's really good. The other one is Hammond. Now, Hammond will do more damage to headshots, but get this, he will do 40%. That's right, 40% more damage to headshots, but body shots are unchanged. You see how this is really complicated, right? But Hammond will do more damage to headshots, but not to body shots. Now, the other one I want to talk about here, who is like, this is the kind of one I opened the video with. It's Tracer, and Tracer is going to be an interesting one. We're going to have to watch and see what happens with Tracer. I do think that Tracer, I mean, it is a buff in a way, because if you've got the aim and you can land the headshots, you'll do more damage against the armored targets. Now, I think it's quite easy to headshot an Erisa. It's quite easy to headshot a Reinhardt. It's definitely easy to headshot a Diva. So you are going to do more damage to those when they've got armor, and you're going to be able to strip their armor off them quicker. Of course, if their armor's completely gone and you're just firing into their body, then, into their HP pool, then you're still doing that kind of damage. Okay, let's take a look at Bastion, right? Bastion is a funky one. So Bastion, what we're looking at here is, in both of his modes, he gets a bit of a buff, right? So in recon mode, you're going to be looking at about a 13% increase on body shots. Now, again, this is inside his fall-off damage range, so this is inside all of the optimal ranges. All of these figures I'm quoting are inside the optimal ranges. And of course, I am some of these figures also, I don't think I've shouted this out in a video yet, but I am getting them from another user on Reddit called Spud Islander, who has done a lot of the number crunching, which is really good. But of course, you can see it on the graph as well. But it's just easier if I shout these figures out. So yeah, Bastion. he will get a 5% increase on headshots in recon mode as well. And remember, Bastion actually got an increased amount of ammo in recon mode recently. So, nice little change there. Sentry mode is going to do 20% more damage to armor. So when you're in the turret mode, you will do 20% more damage to armor. So again, that's really huge. So Bastion is going to shred through tanks much quicker than he does. 20% quicker through their armor, then he just smashes through their health pool. That's going to be quite frightening, I think. So what about Soldier 76? This is the one everybody has been like, well, is Soldier going to be the big one? Is this the one that gets a major mega buff? Well, actually, yeah. And I think he will be stronger. But this is going to be one of those we're going to have to see how it works out in the game. Remember how Soldier plays, right? Soldier is constant DPS. Soldier isn't really massive spike damage. Yes, you can land a Helix rocket and you can land a bunch of headshots and do quite a lot of damage really fast. But generally, Soldier, when you look at the other DPS, when you look at like a McCree's going to output more burst damage. Look at an Ash, more burst damage. Soldier is there constantly putting damage out. So what happens to him? Well, what you're looking at for Soldier for his primary fire is a 16% increase to body shots and a 6% increase on headshot damage. That's, again, inside his optimal range. That might not sound like a lot, but when you consider how much damage Soldier puts out, he actually could be much better now. He's definitely, all of these DPS, everyone you can see on this graph, they're all much better against tanks now. And that's the idea here. Armor is too strong. The devs have said that. The idea is to make armor not as strong, but that has a load of other issues, right? So I guess, we could talk about the other heroes. We could talk about like Ashe, for example, and say Ashe is probably looking at a... we did. She's got the 22% increase on Bob, and that's kind of all you're going to get with Ashe because of the way she does damage, slow fire rate, etc., etc. So I think it would be nice now just to wrap the video up with a little bit of speculation on what's going to happen here. Who wins and who loses? Well, it's clear DPS win here. Now, these are all very early reactions. It's all very early theory crafting, and a lot of this can potentially be wrong. But the facts are, everybody, or well, not everybody, but most people, most DPS, obviously tanks are included in this as well. Let's just say most damage sources are increased against armor now. Armor is less effective. So who uses armor the most? Well, it's the main tanks, isn't it? It's Erisa and it's Reinhardt. So they should suffer because they're going to take more damage. Same for D.Va. D.Va's going to take more damage. D.Va also has been nerfed as well with Defense Matrix, which is actually, I think, a pretty big nerf because it means it's pretty much impossible for D.Va to eat things like Graviton Surges or May Ultimates when she sees them because of the delay. The ult will basically go off before she's got time to Defense Matrix. So that's going to be a funky one. That might actually be a bit too much for D.Va, but we're going to have to wait and see. Defense Matrix is still a good ability. So who wins and who loses? Tanks lose, DPS win. That's what's coming from this. The game is probably going to change quite a lot of this. This is actually one of the bigger changes they've done to Overwatch because this means more damage into tanks. It means tanks are less durable. It means we probably won't see things like 3-3 tank support comps anymore because you just throw one DPS in and suddenly you start burning through the tanks faster. It's going to be really interesting to see where this goes. Right now, let's try not to go mental with like, oh my god, this hero is dead, this hero isn't. It's going to take a little bit of time to work that out. When we do get more information on that, I'll put together more videos and we can work that out, guys. All right, I've been Stylosa, guys. This is Unit Lost. I know this has been quite a complicated video, but armor changes are really, really huge, and it needs to be explained because right now people are just like, oh my god, Tracer does so much more damage, and that's not true. But it could be. All right? Okay, you get it? All right, guys? I think I'm confusing myself now. Anyway, guys, I've been Stylosa. This is Unit Lost. If you enjoyed the video, then like the video. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter, which is @UnitLostGaming. Do follow me on Instagram as well, which is @Stylosa. And I'll catch you lovely lot on the next one. Toodaloo.